In the fall of 1984, American television was searching for something steady, something warm, intelligent, and relatable. Sitcoms were struggling to capture the cultural moment, and one major network was fighting to stay relevant. Then, on September 20th, a brownstone in Brooklyn opened its doors, and television history quietly shifted. The Cosby Show premiered on NBC and within months became more than just a hit. It became a phenomenon. At the center was Dr. Huxtable, a successful obstetrician with a love for jazz and terrible dad jokes, played by Bill Cosby. Beside him stood Claire Huxtable, a commanding attorney portrayed by Phylicia Rashad, whose intelligence and presence anchored the family with strength and grace. Together, they raised 5 children in a household filled with books, music, laughter, discipline, and culture. But what made the show revolutionary wasn't just its humor. It was a portrayal of an affluent, educated African-American family at a time when such representation was rare in mainstream primetime. The Huxtables weren't defined by struggle alone. They were defined by achievement, stability, and everyday family chaos that audiences of all backgrounds could recognize. Almost immediately, viewers connected. Ratings soared. NBC, once sitting at the bottom of network rankings, climbed back to the top. 4 or 5 consecutive seasons, The Cosby Show dominated television, becoming the #1 series in America. It didn't just entertain. It influenced fashion, launched spin-offs, inspired future sitcoms, and reshaped how networks view diverse storytelling. Yet decades later, the series carries a more complicated legacy. Its cultural impact remains undeniable, but its history cannot be discussed without acknowledging the controversies surrounding its central star. The story of The Cosby Show is one of groundbreaking success, transformative representation, and difficult reassessment. In this episode of Cinema Uncovered, we step inside that Brooklyn brownstone, exploring the rise, the reign, the resonance, and the reckoning of one of television's most influential sitcoms. When The Cosby Show began, its foundation was deceptively simple, a family living their everyday lives in Brooklyn. But beneath that simplicity was a carefully constructed blueprint that would redefine the American sitcom. At the heart of the show was Dr. Cliff Huxtable, portrayed by Bill Cosby. Cliff was not the traditional stern television father. He was playful, expressive, occasionally childish, but deeply committed to his role as a parent. As an obstetrician, he was both nurturing and authoritative, delivering babies by day and life lessons by night. His parenting style relied on humor, elaborate analogies, and exaggerated storytelling. Whether he was lecturing Theo about responsibility or teasing his daughters about dating, Cliff's approach made moral lessons feel organic rather than preachy. Opposite him stood Claire Huxtable, played by Phylicia Rashad. Claire was television's embodiment of intelligence, composure, and strength. As a successful attorney, she represented professional excellence while also serving as the emotional backbone of the family. Claire was firm when necessary, elegant under pressure, and unwavering in her expectations for her children. Importantly, she was never overshadowed. Her presence balanced Cliff's humor with authority and depth. Their marriage was portrayed as equal, loving, and rooted in mutual respect, something rarely depicted with such clarity at the time. The Huxtable children were not background characters. They were essential to the show's rhythm and relatability. Sandra, the eldest, represented early adulthood and independence. Denise embodied creativity and rebellion, eventually leading to the spin-off A Different World. Theo became one of the emotional anchors of the series, especially through storylines involving academic struggles and dyslexia, which brought national attention to learning disabilities. Vanessa explored teenage impulsiveness and peer pressure. And Rudy, the youngest, brought innocence and comedic timing that often stole entire scenes. The brilliance of the show's blueprint was its environment. The Huxtable home was filled with art, literature, jazz records, and African-inspired decor. It reflected cultural pride without turning it into a lecture. Education was emphasized not as a burden, but as an expectation. Success was normalized. The children were disciplined but loved, corrected but encouraged. Narratively, most episodes followed a clear structure, a conflict rooted in everyday family life, a humorous escalation, and a meaningful resolution. But what made these stories resonate was their authenticity. Viewers saw their own families in Huxtables, the arguments at the dinner table, the nervousness before a big test, the awkwardness of first dates. the quiet moments between parents after the kids had gone to bed. This blueprint, a successful black family portrayed with dignity, humor, and complexity, challenged long-standing television norms. It proved that mainstream audiences would embrace stories centered on cultural pride and professional achievement without losing universal appeal. In many ways, The Cosby Show wasn't just about introducing characters. It was about establishing a new standard, one that blended comedy with aspiration, warmth with realism, and family life with cultural significance. When The Cosby Show premiered in September 1984, few could have predicted just how quickly it would dominate American television. At the time, NBC was struggling in the ratings, trailing behind its competitors. Within a single season, that narrative flipped. The series climbed to the #1 spot in the Nielsen rankings and held that position for 5 consecutive years, a rare and historic achievement in primetime television. The show didn't just succeed, it stabilized an entire network. Advertisers rushed in. Thursday nights became appointment viewing. The Huxtables were no longer just characters. They were a weekly ritual in millions of households. At its peak, the show drew over 30 million viewers per episode, proving that a family-centered sitcom led by a black cast could command mainstream dominance. But the impact went beyond numbers. The Cosby Show shifted the cultural conversation. It presented an affluent, educated African-American family as the norm rather than the exception. Cliff was a doctor. Claire was a lawyer. Their children were expected to attend college. Their home was filled with art, music, and intellectual discussion. This portrayal quietly dismantled narrow stereotypes that had long limited representation on television. Its success also opened doors for future series. Shows like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Family Matters would later thrive in a landscape the Huxtables helped reshape. Even its direct spin-off, A Different World, became a cultural force of its own, spotlighting life at a historically black college and influencing real-life enrollment at HBCUs. Fashion trends emerged from the show as well, most notably Cliff Huxtable's colorful knit sweaters, which became iconic symbols of 1980s television style. The series also integrated jazz and black artistry into mainstream living rooms, frequently featuring legendary musicians and reinforcing cultural pride without heavy exposition. In redefining what primetime success looked like, The Cosby Show didn't just dominate ratings. It redefined the business strategy of television. It proved that inclusive storytelling could be both commercially powerful and culturally transformative. By the mid-1980s, the Huxtables weren't just America's favorite TV family. They were the centerpiece of a television renaissance. While ratings and cultural milestones defined its success, the true staying power of The Cosby Show came from its storytelling. Beneath the laughter was a carefully crafted narrative approach that blended humor with meaningful life lessons. Never heavy-handed, but always intentional. One of the most powerful examples was Theo Huxtable's academic journey. When Theo struggled in school and was later identified as having dyslexia, the series brought learning disabilities into mainstream conversation. In the mid-1980s, this was rarely depicted in a primetime sitcom. Instead of portraying Theo as lazy or incapable, the show emphasized understanding, patience, and support, reinforcing the idea that intelligence comes in different forms. Denise Huxtable's arc offered another dimension. Portrayed as independent and unconventional, Denise challenged expectations within her own family. Her character's popularity eventually led to the spin-off A Different World, which expanded the universe into college life and further explored black excellence in higher education. Through Denise, the show acknowledged generational differences while maintaining familial respect. Teenage themes were also handled with realism. Vanessa's impulsive decisions and dating dilemmas reflected the awkwardness and vulnerability of adolescence. Sandra's early marriage introduced conversations about responsibility and adulthood. Even Rudy, the youngest Huxtable, provided insight into childhood innocence and the dynamics of being the baby of the family. What set these stories apart was tone. Episodes often began with light comedy, playful teasing at the dinner table, Cliff's exaggerated lectures, Claire's sharp wit, but gradually unfolded into thoughtful reflections on responsibility, honesty, and self-worth. The humor disarmed audiences. The message lingered long after the credits rolled. Music was another storytelling tool. Jazz legends frequently appeared, weaving cultural heritage into everyday scenes. The Huxtable household wasn't just a setting, it was an environment rich with art, literature, and history. Education was presented not as pressure, but as privilege and opportunity. Importantly, the show rarely relied on external conflict. The drama wasn't about crime or crisis. It was about growing up. It was about conversations between parents and kids. It was about accountability balanced with unconditional love. That relatability made the Huxtables feel real, not aspirational caricatures, but a family navigating life one lesson at a time. The Oz stage reveals why the series resonated so deeply. It understood that comedy could teach without preaching, and that representation could empower without spectacle. Through everyday moments, The Cosby Show built a legacy rooted in storytelling that was both entertaining and educational, a balance few sitcoms have mastered since. By the time The Cosby Show concluded its 8-season run in 1992, it had already secured its place as one of the most influential sitcoms in television history. It dominated ratings, reshaped representation, and helped transform NBC into a primetime powerhouse. For years, the Huxtables symbolized warmth, success, and aspirational family life. But legacy is rarely simple. Decades after the series ended, numerous allegations of sexual misconduct were brought against its central star, Bill Cosby. The legal battles that followed, including a conviction that was later overturned on procedural grounds, dramatically altered public perception. Networks removed reruns. Streaming platforms distanced themselves. The show, once a staple of syndicated television, became far less visible. This shift sparked a larger cultural debate. Can a groundbreaking work of art be separated from the actions of its creator? For many viewers, the Huxtables represented empowerment and positive representation. For others, the controversy made revisiting the series emotionally complicated. Yet even within that complexity, the historical impact of the show remains undeniable. It changed the business of television. It brought in mainstream portrayals of Black families. It inspired future creators and performers. Its spin-off, A Different World, influenced real-world conversations about higher education and representation. The ripple effects are still visible in modern family sitcoms today. It isn't about erasing achievement, nor is it about ignoring accountability. It's about acknowledging that cultural landmarks can exist in dual realities, celebrated for their innovation, while scrutinized for the shadows that follow them. The Cosby Show now lives in a space of reflection rather than simple nostalgia. Its influence on television structure, representation, and network strategy is firmly embedded in history, but its legacy is discussed with nuance, a reminder that cultural impact and personal controversy can intersect in ways that redefine how stories are remembered. And perhaps that complexity is part of why its place in television history continues to be examined, debated, and reassessed even decades later. Even with its complicated history, The Cosby Show left an imprint on television that continues to echo decades later. Its influence can be traced not only in ratings records, but in the creative DNA of modern TV shows. First, it redefined what a primetime family series could look like. Before the Huxtables, portrayals of Black families in mainstream television were limited and often narrow in scope. The show normalized professional success, higher education, cultural pride, and multi-generational warmth. Cliff was a doctor. Claire was a lawyer. Their children were expected to pursue excellence. That normalization quietly shifted audience expectations. Second, the series reshaped network programming strategy. Its massive success helped solidify Thursday nights as must-watch television for NBC, paving the way for future blockbusters. It proved that character-driven, culturally grounded storytelling could generate both critical acclaim and commercial dominance. Its influence is visible in later family-centered sitcoms, such as The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which similarly blended humor with lessons about identity and responsibility. The show also directly expanded its cultural footprint through A Different World, which highlighted life at a historically Black college and had measurable real-world impact on HBCU enrollment. Beyond structure and strategy, the legacy lives in tone, the balance of warmth and wit, the use of comedy to teach without preaching, the depiction of marriage as partnership, the dinner table as a classroom. These elements became a template for future storytellers. There's also the generational factor. Millions of viewers grew up watching the Huxtables every week. For many, the series shaped perceptions of education, ambition, and family unity. It became part of 1980s and early 1990s cultural memory, referenced in pop culture, fashion, and even academic discussions about media representation. Today, conversations about the show are layered. Its creative and cultural achievements are recognized alongside the controversies surrounding its central star. But from a purely television history standpoint, its role in reshaping primetime programming is undeniable. The show reminds us that legacy is measured not just by awards or ratings, but by influence, by how many stories were made possible because one show proved they could succeed. And in that regard, The Cosby Show remains one of the most consequential sitcoms ever produced. Interesting trivias. The Huxtable brownstone exterior is a real townhouse located at 10 St. Luke's Place in Greenwich Village, New York, not Brooklyn. Even though the show is set there, the series ran for 8 seasons from 1984 to 1992, producing 201 episodes. It ranked as the #1 show in America for 5 consecutive seasons, 1985 to 1990, a rare achievement in television history. NBC was in last place before the show premiered. Its success helped launch the network's dominant late 80s primetime era. The theme song was re-recorded multiple times in different styles across seasons, including jazz and R&B variations, an unusual move for a sitcom at the time. Cliff Huxtable's colorful sweaters became a pop culture fashion trend, significantly boosting recognition of the Coogie brand in the United States. The character of Claire Huxtable, played by Felicia Rashad, is often ranked among television's most iconic TV moms and professional women. Theo Huxtable's dyslexia storyline helped bring national attention to learning disabilities in the mid-1980s. Denise Huxtable's popularity led to the successful spin-off A Different World, which became a major cultural force on its own. At its peak, the show attracted over 30 million viewers per episode, making it one of the most watched sitcoms of the decade. Jazz legends such as Stevie Wonder made guest appearances, reinforcing the show's deep connection to music and Black artistic culture. The series earned numerous award nominations and wins, including multiple Emmy Awards during its run. For 8 seasons, the Huxtables welcomed audiences into their home, into their laughter, their lessons, and their love. What began in 1984 as a simple family sitcom on NBC quickly became a cultural cornerstone. It dominated ratings, reshaped representation, and redefined what primetime success could look like. The show proved that stories centered on education, ambition, and strong family foundations could resonate across generations. It normalized excellence. It celebrated culture. It blended humor with humanity in a way that felt effortless and enduring. And yet, its legacy remains layered. The impact of the series on television history is undeniable, but its place in modern conversations is complex. It stands as both a groundbreaking achievement in representation and a reminder that cultural icons can carry complicated histories. That duality is part of what makes television history so compelling. Shows don't exist in isolation. They reflect the times that created them and continue to evolve in meaning long after their final episode airs. Here on Cinema Uncovered, we revisit the classics not just to celebrate them, but to understand them, their rise, their influence, and their lasting imprint on the industry. Because whether viewed through nostalgia, analysis, or reflection, The Cosby Show remains one of the most consequential sitcoms ever to grace the small screen.